How can you find and understand God's will for your life? What should you do when you're unsure of what the next step is that you should take? Do you ever feel stuck in the mundane, ordinary, predictable patterns of life? This is a challenging place to be. If you're like me, when you gave your life to God, you told him you'd go anywhere and do anything. After all, Jesus did say that whoever wants to be his disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow him. And no doubt there have been amazing opportunities to experience God's will, his provision, and to do great things while following his lead. But what about when we feel unsettled or frustrated? How can we know which step to take or which direction to go? Should you stay or should you move on? How can you know what God's will is? You may not like my initial answer, but sometimes following God means staying put. Yep, sometimes the most daring, obedient step you can take is staying right where you are. Let me explain using a brief passage from Scripture. In Luke chapter 38, it says, "The man from whom the demons had gone out begged to go with him, but Jesus sent him away, saying, 'Return home and tell how much God has done for you.' So the man went home and told all over town how much Jesus had done for him." Now, can you imagine the excitement of this new believer? I mean, seemingly he was ready for anything. Following Jesus throughout the region, quickly rose to the top of what he wanted to do, yet Jesus still sent him home. Home. Does that word sound boring to you? Have you ever wanted out of home? For you, home could be lots of different things. It could be your church, your job, the town that you live in, a relationship. What is home to you with what you're wrestling with right now? And why did Jesus send this man home? Maybe it was because Jesus was no longer accepting application for potential disciples. Or maybe it was because the new believer wasn't ready for that type of ministry. Or maybe Jesus ran out of exciting plans when this guy was born. Maybe all Jesus had for him was to stick around his hometown with the same people, the same view, the same jobs, and dare I say, the same church. I don't think any of those thoughts are true, and you should guard your heart from wondering the same about your life too. There may come a time when God will ask you to move from familiar settings. But before you do anything drastic, consider that a change in you rather than a change of home, location, job, church, or relationship could be all that is needed to completely turn things around. The following 3 guidelines, I believe, can help you determine if following God means that you should stay right where you are. The first thing to consider is, do you want wisdom more than agreement? Remember in that passage that the man begged Jesus to go with him, but obeyed when Jesus had other plans for him. I hope that you have godly relationships within your life, and if so, it will always serve you best to discuss your aspirations and plans with the key influencers in your life. This could be a parent, a pastor, an employer, a mentor, a small group of strong friends. Whoever they are, be sure to initiate those conversations with them. I mean, how often do we head out or make a decision without adhering to the counsel of those who care the most about us? I've heard these types of people or leaders in our life referred to as gray heads, meaning they're people that have been where we want to go. They're often older, wiser, or have more experience. They're the type of people that we can seek godly advice from. If you do not have these types of relationships in your life, begin to identify them. The second thing to consider is, are you running from or towards something? When things become difficult, it's easier to lean away from the trouble. And sometimes when lacking awareness, we mask things like self-promotion, impatience, and immaturity with words and phrases like, "I'm called," or "I'm taking a step of faith," or "mission," when really it's just an attempt to leave a place of discomfort or challenge. But faithfulness is a sign of maturity because it is not always the most easy or appealing choice to make. Have you been faithful where God has put you? If so, wait for him to send you in your calling. Just because you feel called to be or do something does not mean that you should go and do that thing today. I've heard a calling explained as a confirmation that you need to be prepared. And the sending is confirmation that God has empowered you to go. The sending will take place after you have been faithful and trustworthy with what God has entrusted to you now. Another way to understand this dynamic is by considering gifting and calling. Many people have several gifts that can be used to serve the church or others. However, giftings are not designated to a specific location or church. They simply exist and can be used. On the other hand, a call involves a specific location, area, or body for the gifts to be used within. So how can you interpret the difference between the calling and the sending? How can you know if you're being immature or impatient? How can you determine if you should stay or go? Here's 3 questions that you can ask. What do the wise counsel in my life think? Have I been faithful what has already been entrusted to me? And is there the slightest hint of guilt, boredom, or impatience within me? If so, you may need to check your heart and your motives as to why you really want to go. Concerning the man that we read about in the passage, he did just what Jesus told him to, and it proved to be very productive and worthwhile, which leads me to the next point. You need to consider the grace you already have where you are. Are you already producing fruit where you are? The man in Luke chapter 8 went home and simply told how much God had done for him. In Mark 5 verse 20, the same story is detailed, and it says that the people of his hometown were amazed. In other words, he was effective and fruitful right where he was. It wasn't necessary for him to go somewhere else other than where he was already planted. So I challenge you to look at your home in a new and fresh way. God may move you from what is now home. He may be leading you and guiding you out of where you currently are. But without the right attitude, your home, your calling, your gifting will always be unsatisfying, mundane, and predictable. Sometimes I believe it's possible for following God to mean staying right where you are. Like the man in Luke chapter 8, let God send you home with a new perspective, and things can change, even if it just simply starts in you. Hey, if this video helped you, be sure to hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe. And if you're in a church and want to be more effective, be sure to watch this next video about the 5 skills effective church leaders develop to increase their capacity.